So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we have the man in the house, the GOAT, the legend. This is, in fact, a man that I am completely excited to be able to talk to. GreyBeard, thank you for coming on the Shoreline Spotlight. How are you doing today?
I'm fabulous, and I'm already in tomorrow. It's Wednesday here. It's just gone midnight, so this is pretty exciting for me. At my age, I don't get to stay up this late often, so it's pretty cool.
I can't say I've ever spoken to somebody in tomorrow before, so this is going to be my first ever. So with the first ever talking into tomorrow, you know, Young Money Clan is definitely our major topic point today, but I think we need to take a step back before we take a step forward. You know, this is the third instance of an RLCS team being banned in its entirety, like the entire team being banned for the wrongdoing. We started off with Cypher, which was an NA team back in 2017. They had Atomic, King Wizard, Double, Akinro, and Corrupt. You know, they had a loaded team, but guess what? Atomic was underage. Atomic shouldn't have been there and played underage, unregistered, and they caught a ban for it. You know, a variance of bans. We saw, you know, some players get a year. We saw some players get a year and a half. We saw Corrupt get a permaban. So it really just goes to show that there's a lot to be said there. And then we move on and we saw the Space Knights back in 2020 do the same move. They went and got Zen when they had Gasbow, Azu, and Psycho, another unregistered and underage player. And now, to me, we have the biggest integral breach in RLCS taking place, maybe even in esports at this point, because to me, it's all about professionalism. It's all about integrity. It's all about holding that fine line in a standard that everybody should uphold. And Young Money Clan, Motion, Riho, and Nugget all got banned for match throwing. They literally they decided as a group, we're going to go to a different stage. We're going to try to make some noise. And the noise that they were making, I won't even say was the right noise. They were just making noise. They were just being disruptive more than anything, being a little disrespectful towards the region. And they continued to disrespect the region by saying, hey, we're going to match alter to try to get it how we want. We're going to wait. We're going to wait to see what happens with this team. We're going to wait and see what happens over there. We're going to do whatever we can to elongate the process to the longest of our ability. And now Young Money Clan gets banned. And I know the big thing that me and you were talking about, and the big talking point here is, you know, moving the age gap from 15, when they said they were going to move it up to 17, and then moving it down to 13. Do you feel this is one of the biggest reasons why this, I guess, breach has happened here in RLCS?
I certainly think that is symptomatic of it. And you know, when I heard that they were coming in here, I had conversations about them, about how involved their parents were. Like, did their parents even know that they were competing in this sort of high-level Rocket League or esports competition? And then when they were coming out here, they were going to go to Reunion Island for a week or two. I asked again. I said, "Have you had a conversation with a responsible adult, not just about the Rocket League, but about what you're doing, where you're going to go, how this is all going to work?" Because that was my concern. And these are 16. I think two of them are 16, one's 17. And even at that age, it's, I mean, I was 16 a very long time ago, but you're in a completely different frame of mind in terms of life experience and all of that. And then to bring it lower, and I get why they're doing it. It kind of encourages people. And, you know, when you're 12, 13, 14, 15, I want to play video games for a living. It sounds all exciting, but then they are the ones that are really, really good, and they're thrust into the limelight at the top of this esport, and suddenly they've got fans. You know, they've got adoring fans, but they've also got, it can get quite nasty. You know, there are people who don't like you, and they're like, how are you even on this team? And and Twitch chat is just can be a complete cesspool. Is there anybody giving them some kind of guidance? How do they deal with that? And you very quickly realize that being good at the game is really only a small part of the equation. There is the professionalism. What does it mean to be an esports pro? It's not TV games. This is, you're in a professional setting. Who's guiding them on that? Who's telling them how to deal with media? I mean, we've seen some atrocious media appearances by these very young players. So it is, this is a very long-winded way for me to answer your question, is that if you're going to open it up to that young age, there very quickly needs to be infrastructure in place that can help to mentor, to guide, to kind of show the way, because it can be incredibly disrupting. So that's my concern with it. In the meantime, I want to find the 13-year-olds in my region that can compete and try and look after those things. But it's a sensitive issue.
Yeah, it's not necessarily the conversation of not letting them compete. It's the conversation of how do we control it in a healthy manner where we can get this progressive growth going. And I mean, at 13, 14, 15, I mean, you were saying 16, 17. I mean, at any of those ages, I promise you, it didn't matter if it was 13 or 17, I was still struggling to listen to my parents. So if I have a coach sitting there yapping at me, or if I even have a mental coach, somebody coming to me who I don't know, it's like, man, who are you? How are you going to come up to me and tell me how to do my thing? And, a lot of these teams being bubble teams and then coming in, they might not have that structure of integrity on the back. And like you said, talking to parents, who is their manager? Who's like running the helm outside of just these young kids, because it's cool seeing young kids get into the scene. Obviously you want to see this breakout talent happening, especially at a younger age. But the reality of it is how do you control that? And then again, you talked about being able to control that. So would you maybe suggest the idea of like a committee of ex-players, or a committee of older esports entities that have been a part of the scene for a while that would come together? Because I think it's a bigger conversation than just RLCS. You're going to see a lot of these similar leagues take a similar, step in the direction of, well, we want to have 13-year-olds playing. So maybe there just needs to be a committee that is of Rocket League, of Overwatch, of Call of Duty, of, all these different games that kind of pop out as major titles, and say, who are some of the people that stand out that give a good, wholesome, take on the sport, that can come in and create this atmosphere that says maybe this is the guidelines on which most leagues should run. Obviously, you can have your own rule sets, but here's the basis of how things should be run. You should make sure that these things are in place. You should make sure that these rules are in place, and you should make sure that everything is being followed in a certain way, because otherwise it's kind of just allowing them to run rampant at that point, if you really think about it. So, I mean, my next thing I guess I would want to say is, if you were to maybe go in that direction, how would you go about it?
Well, you know what? You say the word committee, and a cold shiver goes down my spine, because committees are, they can grind things to a halt. So there's a real balance here, because you still want innovation, you still want forward thinking, and you don't want to move in the direction of slowing down everything because of a few kids had a rough time or broke rules or all that sort of thing. I loved the one thing you said there is there are former players would be fantastic, guys who have the experience. Someone like Squishy Muffins, who by all accounts, from what I can see of the guy, an amazing person. He became a global superstar at a young age. He's been through that fire, and it would be amazing to have his voice. Another name that comes to mind is someone like J-Naps. He's still competing, but he's an older citizen, and he's been at it since he was 15, 16, and having met him, that's a guy who's got his head on. He's level-headed, he's rational, and I think he would be massively contributive to, like, okay, this is how we do things. So I think there is a call for that, but maybe it's. I think there are a number of structures that can be in place. Certainly, if you are an org, and if you're a big org, Gen G, Vitality, Dignitas, that sort of thing, they should have these sorts of things built into their, however they operate and work. That then leaves there's so many orgs that are 17-year-olds with a logo who now have an org, and they're certainly not going to have the infrastructure for that. So that we would have to think about and see how we go. But I think it's a case of just, it's incremental. Build things slowly, but have people involved who have some experience, but have people who are experienced but wanted to grow, want to encourage young people to, because there's such great opportunities in esports. So you want that to be encouraged and not shut down, because it's easy for a committee to come together and say, okay, well, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can compete, but you can't go to a LAN, you can't, and you don't want a bunch of barriers being put in the way, unless we raise the age. If we raise the age, it's a different conversation, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. Epic, I'm assuming Epic Games, there was deep consultations with somebody about it, that they decided this was the route to go. And if that is the route we're going, well, then people like yourself, like me, you know, the people who've kind of been around a bit, it falls to us to try and put these some sort of infrastructure in place.
Absolutely. And I mean, with all these kind of things happening, you know, with these slip-ups happening, you know, in SSA as of recent, how do you really see, you know, South America Rocket League scene evolving in the coming years? And what type of role do you really want to play in that growth?
So I've sort of found myself taking this role of being an evangelist for the region. And I think how that I've been playing Rocket League for a long time. I found the game 9 years ago. It was at a time that I needed something to take my mind off, you know, real life and whatever. I loved the game. And then 5 years ago, got quite involved in the community. So seeing, you know, the names that were mentioned, people like To Die For and Snowy and other names that are coming up, Guns and Sweaty Clarence and all of these are people I know their stories, and I want to see them. I want to create an environment where they can succeed and they can have the best opportunities. But so I see my role as pretty much what we've spoken about is at the bottom end. How do we promote the game, get more and more people playing the game so that the player base is growing, and then start to build structures in terms of coaching. If, okay, I want to be competitive at this game, how do we funnel them into some sort of program that can take their skill and make it better? And then if they're going to compete and be in an org, I want the orgs to go, okay, are you going to look after these guys? Or are you trying to make some 15-year-old sign a 2-year contract with no representation or understanding of what they're doing? So I guess it's all just up and down. And at the top end, I'd like to see an SSA team making a serious run for world champions sometime in the next few years, but kind of build up a functional Rocket League scene in the region, because it is a little bit disparate and it is a very immature scene.
I can definitely agree with that. I mean, being an educator myself, I mean, you look around, like we talk about all these different points. And for me, you know, seeing this, going back to Young Money Clan, seeing this integral breach is what I'm going to continue to call it. I saw the same thing happen in my local area with one of the high schools where they went up, getting ready to go up to state competition. You know, they're getting ready for the playoffs. And as they're leading up to the playoffs, they're making rash decisions to try to alter what's happening with their placements on matches, and they end up losing their playoff opportunity. And these are kids. Same thing with these other kids. They are kids. Everybody remember, these are kids. So like at the end of the day, you know, one thing that I will continue to strive on, and one thing that you do a really good job at, is harnessing that positivity within the community, engaging them and fostering excitement, participation, and really, you know, just being honestly relentless in your approach, but in a healthy way. You come at it from all these different angles. You even put yourself out there to the community and saying, hey, you know, reach out to me if you guys want to talk, because clearly there's things that you have to say and there's things that people need to hear as well. And being at the helm of a region, you know, being the host of a region, you are a voice. You're a voice for more than just yourself. You're a voice for every single player that steps in there. So honestly, when you came in here, it made me really excited, because I knew that we would have a much more experienced gamer, much more experienced player in esports and the economy and the growth of what's happened. Like you said, 9 years ago is when you picked up playing Rocket League, but I'm pretty sure gaming's been a part of your life for a much longer time than that. So you're trying to harness a lot of that positivity of what you've seen from the different aspects of gaming. So I guess as just a counterpoint or just a side point, I'd like to say, if it wasn't Rocket League, what would be that game for you that you maybe would have kind of delved into deeper if it wasn't Rocket League? Do you think Rocket League was just that game that really just was the one that really just puts you in a spot where you just didn't think you could turn back?
So I started, I'm old enough that, you know, gaming when I was growing up was, you know, the first game I ever played was Pong, which was probably 1979, 1980, 81. I was sort of 8, 9, 10 years old. But then when sort of between the age of about 17 or 18 to 42, so that's about 26 years or so, something like that, I actually didn't game. I was off being a responsible grown-up. I wasn't doing childish things like playing games. And I found my way back to it because I was at a time in my life that I needed some kind of entertainment. And my son was a gamer, so I was like, hey, let me try this out. and I played several games, and gaming had changed so much in the 26-year break that I'd had since I last played any kind of game. It was kind of mind-blowing. So I experimented with you, and I kind of enjoyed them, but nothing grabbed me. And I actually saw some Rocket League clips on social media somewhere, and I don't know what it is. I still don't have a proper answer. I went, that game looks fantastic. I bought the game, and I have literally not played another game. I do think if it hadn't been Rocket League, I would have found something. I don't know what that would have been, because like the shooter games don't appeal to me at all. Like the first person shooters, I don't know, something in my brain just doesn't work with that, and I've never gotten into that. So Rocket League satisfied something, and now the way I see it, I'm too old to get good at another game, so I've spent all my time being average in Rocket League.
Well, I mean, for me, I can relate with you in a lot of similar ways. That, you know, back in 2015, I had the luxury of actually having a PlayStation at the time, and they gave it away as a Game Pass game. So I got it for free at the time, but I bought the game probably 3 other times after that. But it's one of those things where I got it for free. You know, I'd go to work, I'd come home, I'd hang out with the friends, and we kind of just cultivate a community. You know, when I became the manager of a gaming lounge, it was my way of really connecting more with the community, connecting more with the high schoolers. When they said, hey, let's delve and get esports going in our community, you know, we had 3 high schools in our first year come in, and immediately I said, all right, who's doing Rocket League? And there was one school that was doing Rocket League. I came in and I decided to be the coach for Rocket League that year. And then the next year I came back, I said, all right, now we have 5 schools. Now can I help all of you? It seems all of you have a school. Can I just go around and help all of you now? So I can really understand what you're saying about like Rocket League. Just, it's grabbed me in the very same type of way where it's hard to look away. You know, there's definitely that love-hate relationship. At times you're like, man, I don't know why I'm playing this game. But then at other times you're like, I don't know why I'd be playing any other game. You know, the relationships that we've built from it, the places that it's taken us to, the opportunities that's been hoisted in front of us from simply a game. It's been a game.
Yeah. Well, so I think that the revelation for me actually was, because the one thing I couldn't understand about modern gaming was the idea that you're playing other real people somewhere else in the world or in the country. That was just amazing to me, and I was a little afraid of it to begin with, and for the first 6 months of Rocket League, I played bots. I wasn't interested in playing online. It was just I couldn't wrap my head around it. And then when I did start playing, you know, against other people, and then I'd get added. You know, somebody wants to be my friend. I was like, whoa! I didn't want to be involved in the community. I didn't want to talk to other people. I just want to play this game. And then when I finally did start getting involved in the community, that was the big revelation for me, is that this is not just about burning hours in front of a screen. It is actually about building relationships, making friends, making connections all over the world. And I think that's a major part of why I've become so excited about it. And as concerned as I am about young people, you know, playing the game, and we've had that whole conversation, it is remarkable. These young people are building friendships that will last a lifetime, that will last them into their business life, whatever they do when they do become adults and go into the world. And that for me was the missing component, is how amazing the connection, the human connection. We all talk about the toxicity, and we all have our fair share of it, but that sense of community and connecting it is incredible. And, you know, that then led to streaming. I then found out about streaming, and I'm like, people watch other people play a game. I couldn't understand it. And when I started streaming, it felt so awkward. I was like, I wanted to see how it works. And the next thing, people are coming to watch it. They're talking to you in chat. I'm like, this is an entire world. And being an older person, that has led me to having fantastic conversations with parents. And honestly, that's one of my favorite things to do. I have spoken to, you know, a young kid who really wants to compete in Rocket League, but his parents are saying, don't waste your time on video games. I want to have conversations with them so they understand the deeper, broader breadth of it, that there are opportunities here. And absolutely, schooling is a priority. Exercise is incredibly important. Going outside is really important, but don't underestimate the importance of the desire to compete and the opportunity to to connect with other people in the world. So it's not just been the game for me, it's been everything that surrounds modern gaming, which gets me very, very excited.
That hands down has to be one of the most beautiful responses I think I've ever heard personally. That touches really close to home for me because of just being an educator, like I said, harnessing my own community. The biggest thing that I want to do with my community that I have, at least, is I try to harness all the kids in the community, all the kids that are part of my county, not just my city, my county, and how can I bring them together to be a part of something that is bigger than all of them, like you said, that will grow and expand to something much greater from that point. So I guess one thing that I think, before I kick it on over to our other panelists and kind of give them an opportunity to jump in and give their take, how, if you could share your most memorable moment or one of your greatest highlight moments that you've had being a part of RLCS, what do you think that would be up to this point?
Probably going to the first LAN that I'd ever been to. So also the whole idea of a LAN was something that was foreign to me, and I'd never been to a LAN. Well, that's not entirely true. There was in late 2019, there was a very small LAN in South Africa, but then COVID hit after that. So it was this tiny LAN, and that was pretty cool. And then there was COVID. So for 2-3 years, nothing was going down. Then we were in RLCS, and and I said, as soon as we can, there are crowds allowed at a LAN, I want to go. And so I went to London, my wife and I went, and that was, I mean, just as a moment to take it from sitting at my desk in front of a screen playing this game or streaming or casting to having 5,000 people in the stadium and the roaring and the chanting, and it was, I mean, you can't help but be in awe of what this means, and for it to shatter any illusion that this is some little part-time leisure activity. So for me, that was, and then to realize that our region were a part of this global thing was amazing. So I think that is, and I've been to a couple of LANs since then, but the first is always amazing.
Absolutely. And I remember the first time I got to go to a LAN just as a fan and being able to experience it. It was breathtaking, to be honest with you. You show up and you start running into all these people that you've met online, and they're like, "Oh, you're so-and-so," and you're like, "Who are you?" And then they give you the game routine, like, "Oh my goodness, yeah, nice to see you." It's like, and it's really crazy. And I know, like, for me, when I went out to RLCS Texas, I was standing in line for the Space Station Gaming autograph sign, just so I could go meet some of the players. I am a big Space Station fan, primarily because of my relationship with Tri-House and Nito and stuff like that. And I had never met Tri-House in person. We had worked together quite a bit to this point. And I'm standing in line, and the line was so long that Space Station Gaming decided that they were going to move some of their talent, that were some of their extra talent, outside to the pavilion, while other people kind of waited to get inside, so you could still meet some of their talent in case you didn't get to see the main talent. So waiting in line. And all of a sudden, I see the talent come out, and it's Tri-House walking by, and I'm like, "Hey, Tri-House, how you doing?" No, wave to them. And mind you, they have their all of their people with them, trying to move them along, because they can't really wait. They got to get back to where they need to be. Everything's on timeline. I know this, working in production, but Tri-House, literally the most humbling, stops, looks over, and goes, "Oh my goodness, it's Joseph the Voice. How are you doing, buddy?" And he was like, I'm sorry, I can't talk really, but I got to get going to the back. But if you want to come to the pavilion, come see what's up. I was like, Tri-House, go do what you got to do. I didn't even expect you to stop, man. I greatly appreciate that. But that humbling, greeting of, just feeling like I was really brought into the community at that point from just that single interaction made me feel really good about just being there, being a part of it, seeing it, really feeling like it's coming to fruition for all the work that's been put into it to this point. So before I continue to take up too much of the air, I think we should kick it on over to Bub and Philly and Zen and see what they have to say, because I know I want to see if they have some good questions for you themselves. So I'm going to shut up here for the moment, and I'm going to pass it on over to Bub. And Bub, take it away.
Well, thank you, JTV. GreyBeard, first of all, it's an honor to have you here on Lake Talk. I mean, I can't describe how thankful we are to have you here. I guess I'm going to kind of advocate for somebody in chat, Megaboom. They mentioned the players need guidance, but orgs are also to blame. They don't do it for passion now, they chase the bag. And I'm quoting, so A 15 to 16-year-old shouldn't get screwed signing a piece of paper. Generalizing, not every org, but there are some that do. What are your thoughts on that, I guess?
I would echo that, and I think what I have learned in my time in engaging is there are orgs and there are orgs and there are orgs. You've got your big, well-established ones who've been around, they understand what it means. But in the most part, and in SSA in particular, it's mostly just other kids who've figured out a name and a logo, and they're like signing up players, but it's all for a bit of fun, and it's a little bit loosey-goosey, and that's what concerns me. I had a player who's about to sign for an org, and he was saying, listen, I've been asked to sign for 2 years. Is that long? Is it short? Is it? And I'm like, this guy, and I said, have you had a conversation with your parents about this? Are they involved? And he's like, well, my mom's like, she's okay. If I'm happy, she's happy. And that is what's kind of freaking me out is, so yes, if you are going to be an org, you have got to know what's going on, and you have got to be a part of mentoring, guiding, and all that sort of thing. But I don't know where the responsibility lies. Is that something Blah should be concerned about? Epic? I don't know who's responsible for what, but certainly I feel, and in my region, and this is the region I'm familiar with, it needs a lot of professionalizing.
I guess one quick follow-up question before I pass the torch along is in other professional leagues, I'm just going to name a few, and I'm not sure how familiar you are, so apologies, but
not at all. I promise you.
The National Hockey League, the Major League Baseball, the National Basketball Association, all of them have some sort of players guidance, players assistance program that they have built to not only help players learn how to handle social media and handle the criticism that you mentioned. You've said before that. Twitch chat is what it is at times. It can be fantastic, but it can also be just as much bad as it is good. I don't really know, like you said before, where it would fall. If it would be on Blast, it would be on Epic, or if it would be on the players. But would that be something that you think would be beneficial?
Absolutely, and I think there's lessons we can learn from traditional sports. I don't think we should try and replicate what they do, because esport is different, but it is similar enough that we can learn lessons, and we should see what has worked there. And they don't even get it right. I mean, the world is changing. Guiding a 13-year-old 20 years ago is a completely different thing to guiding a 13-year-old in 2024, where TikTok, social media, all and just constant access, just the online thing. So yes, see where things have been tried and what has worked, and then try that as an org, as a league, as a whatever. But it's absolutely worth trying to make the effort.
Right, that's all I got. Zen, how about you?
So I have a lot, but I'll try to make it as short as possible. First, I actually know Motion decently well. He's been in a lot of my tournaments. Talked to him off stream and stuff, and he's always been super cool with me. Riho a little bit as well, and Nugget's actually one of the first high level players that came to my stream, would come and play in my tournaments, stuff like that. And I want to kind of highlight what you said. It's funny because it's not really funny, but esports, it's vicious, right? Twitter, Twitch chat, all of that, it is vicious. And I promise you, if I told you guys what I was doing at 17, the podcast would get shut down. I'd be canceled. You know what I mean? Like, no joke, like literally, So I think you brought up a great point that we kind of, have to remember that these are still kids, and it's tough. So I guess my kind of question is, what do you think about the whole situation and what can be done about it? Because from their point of view, let me say this. I agree with both of these statements. I think the ban was right. I think you should, get in trouble. You should, the ban was very, very correct, because they were technically cheating, right? They were trying to lose a series on purpose. But I also kind of get where they're coming from, especially as kids. If they say, hey, this is our only chance at a major, and a lot of people just say, hey, it's the format, it's the format, it's the format. So, is there something we can do with the format? Like, what do you think we can do to kind of avoid something like that in the future? Because it does sound almost counterintuitive or almost like an oxymoron to say you need to lose earlier in the tournament to make it farther. Like that's tough,
Look, I don't think there's an ideal format. If you look at any competitive activity anywhere in the world, there are people trying to get around the rules, over the rules, under the rules. That's just a fact of that. I mean, my thought about what. Yes, it is a weirdness that you could improve your situation by losing a few games.
Right.
But the rules are very clear that you can't do that. If the rules were saying, well, you can manipulate this and you can try that, then great. Go ahead, fill your boots, do your thing. That's going to lead to all sorts of other problems. But I absolutely get where they're coming from. And I mean, you mentioned it yourself, and I am enormously grateful that Facebook didn't exist until I was deep into my 30s. So, all the mistakes I made were made relatively privately. They're making them in front of the world. I absolutely get where they were coming from, but there has to be consequences. And it's important for them that they learn that there are consequences from their actions, especially when it's online. Online is so weird because you hear the names Nugget, Ryu, Motion, Snowy, To Die For, Sweaty. These are GreyBeard. These are all cool names, and they almost lose that sense that this is a real person here.
A human being.
Yeah, exactly. So rock and roll, fill your boots, go and, say whatever you want about the person. And I think they fell victim to that in terms of not being aware that there were greater consequences for other people, for other real people. So they get the ban, but in terms of my own personal philosophy, redemption, there has to be a road to redemption. You can't just say, okay, you're banned, you're a terrible person, you what an awful thing you did. Yeah, they made a dumb thing, so they've got to serve their punishment and then have a way back. They're going to be 25 years old looking back at their stupid 16-year-old selves.
Right.
So I feel like you asked a couple of questions, but is there a perfect format? Whatever you do, whatever the rules are, somebody is going to try and manipulate the rules in their favor. And that's why we have to have rules and why we have to come down hard on enforcing and following those rules.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, I could probably spend another 20 minutes talking about it, but I won't. So the other thing I want to bring up is, we talked about kind of a committee, something like that. I think esports needs to I think a big problem in esports, I think we can all agree, or maybe not, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's the monetizing part, right? Because we talked about NBA, NHL, all that. They have so much money pouring into it that, it's easy to say, hey, we'll hire this. This guy will be the guy that coaches these players, and this is a guy that somebody's going to do that probably on a voluntary status right now in esports. You know what I mean? And I think it's tougher in the smaller regions because you don't, when it comes to NA, EU, for instance, the teams that make it, they're with orgs, right? So that's kind of the org's responsibility, right? And it comes with the threat of, if we break the rules, if I say something wrong on the internet, my org is going to kick me and hold me accountable, and I can't have that, right? But when you compare it to somewhere like SSA, where it's more of just either a small org or just a group of 3 players that got together, nobody's really holding them accountable aside from themselves. And when the oldest one's 17, that's a very scary thing. But yeah, I gotta say, but before I pass it on, I might start paying you to any book I want to read, anything like that. I'm gonna pay you to read it. That way I can listen to it. But it was a blast getting into talk with you, getting to hear from you, and I'm grateful for it. But yeah, we'll go ahead. I think we still got Philly, if I'm wrong.
Yep, I got a couple questions I think for you, GreyBeard. You and JTV spent some time talking about development and growth So my question is, in your opinion, how did the lack of major spots affect the growth of SSA as a region for the first 2 years? I should specify.
All right. Well, I should probably say right out the gate that because we came from such a low base, competitive Rocket League was dying in this region before we were included. So there were very few players. No one was really competing. And then suddenly the base started to, when we were included in RLCS, we saw an immediate uptick in people playing the game, people wanting to compete in the game. So we almost came from such a low base that there was massive improvement. And by the end of the first season, the quality of Rocket League in the region had been massive. But by the second season, we were already seeing, okay, we have improved as a region, but we are still so far behind the global meta. And is it really going to help us to have Limitless or 3 players go, or well, we had 2 wildcard slots. So 6 players go and scrim with high level or bubble teams for a couple of weeks and come back. Is there going to be a fast enough transfer of knowledge? And the brutal answer is there isn't. The fact that we're in majors now, fantastic. It's going to happen more. It's still not enough. And why I say through gritted and long teeth that the region, opening up the regions, I do think is going to be good for us because it has expanded the competition and lit a fire under us to get better, because as there is a sense, I think there has been a sense of complacency of, and it's one of the effects of being a one team region is that, like, okay, well, we're not going to beat the top team, but let's do as well as we can. Suddenly it's, well, right. It's not just that. You've now got 30% of the competitive field is now not from your region, and they are more than likely better than you are right now. We have got to improve. And as we know, the best way to improve is to get smashed by people who are better than you. So in the long term, we're going to have short-term pain, but I think this is actually going to help us accelerate our skill.
Okay. And to kind of follow up on that, I think you were kind of hinting at it, and I want to take a question from Rumble Truck in chat. They wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on your ideal RLCS format in terms of number of teams at majors, at worlds, how that looks. So if GreyBeard was in charge of RLCS, how would you structure the majors into divvying out major and world spots?
Well, to me, it's kind of weird that there are places in the world that get more spots than others. First of all, that's my question. I know there was a riot, almost a riot, when North America and Europe went from 5 spots to 4. Yeah. And I'm going, well, okay. But first, understand the massive privilege you have to have that many spots. Yes, you're a bigger scene, you're establishing far more players, all of that. So from that point of view, I can agree with it, but let's move with an understanding that you're very, very fortunate and privileged to have that. I never objected to the reduction of spots there. If I were in charge, and of course, if I had the money, I think, at 24 places would be fantastic, because then SSA could get 2, MENA could get 3, OCE would get more, Europe and North America would get more. But you also want the best of the best. And I honestly do think, as it stands right now, I think the format now is good. The only thing that leaves me with the question is, should it be Swiss into single elimination? Maybe it should be double elimination. I love Swiss. Out of all of the early formats, I think Swiss is the best. Groups are kind of boring. You're kind of working your way through formalities, so that the top 2 teams you always knew were going to go through, and each group will go through. And then, outright double elimination bracket from the beginning is a little brutal. So I love Swiss, but maybe into a double elim. And 16 places, and I know Johnny Boy has advocated for, there's a way to do 18 and 20 teams. Maybe let's go with that first. So yeah, I mean, from a bias of SSA, I'd love for us to have 2 slots, 3 slots, whatever it is. I do think it's unrealistic. We've got to get better before that happens. But I do think there's a place for 18 or 20 teams.
Perfect. Great. I'm happy to hear that. I think expanding would be a good idea with how many regions we have now, to get at least 2 from every region, I think is needed. Like you said, otherwise it makes it really hard on the region that only gets 1 team to distill that knowledge that is gained from playing at a LAN, playing on the world stage. I think that's needed for multiple teams in a region to an experience to really show growth. I mean, Sam took multiple worlds. I think they started in season 7, and it took them a long time to even win a series at a LAN before they became kind of that next up and coming region right behind NA and EU next to MENA. So I think that'd be a good step here in the future.
And I just to add on, I love the fact that it's the same format this entire season. I hated the different formats. You know, every split had its own format.
It got confusing real fast.
It's confusing, and then also, you know, if you taking a leaf out of traditional sports, and I'm sure the hockey league, the baseball league, you know, my point of reference is our soccer leagues. They have run this the same way for 100 years. You know how it works, and you strategize according to that format. So whatever the format is decided on, I like the idea of let's lock it in and keep that format. I like the predictability of that, at least.
Yeah.
I guess one more thing. You mentioned Johnny Boy talked about an expanded Swiss, and we'll get this moving real quick because I think we're running short on time. But he also mentioned, I think it was in a recent video he uploaded to YouTube, where he was talking about his salt mine. I think it was his single elimination bracket he ran, where it was kind of double elim, kind of not. It was like a staged single elimination bracket. Do you have any thoughts on viability for that, or maybe not, or just complicated?
No, I feel like it's a little bit out of my wheelhouse in terms of expertise, but I do think someone like Johnny, to me, is smart. This is someone who's thought about the game, and he's been involved in long enough to have proper input. So I think it's a great idea to experiment with it in things like salt mine, community events, and then get feedback and then go, okay, for the main game, this is how we're going to do it based on all these experiments. But I mean, ultimately, you want to make sure that the best team in the world wins. But there are so many opinions, like the fact that the top team, there was no auto qualifying. Everybody had to be down in the dirt fighting and bare knuckle fighting with everybody else. And I kind of like the weirdness of that. I understand the argument from an org's point of view that your top team that you're paying $5,000 a player every month, you know, has a bad day and gets knocked out in a double elim. That's rough. I get it. But that's a great story. I quite like that. I know the players and the orgs hated it, but not a bad idea. They'll probably are going to change that, though.
I just think they need to do a much better job with the seeding. Like, I kind of agree with you that I like it, but, you know, when it's the seeding is a bit atrocious. TSM comes to mind. I think it was Qual too. I can't remember the 2 teams they had to play back to back, and they end up not making. I'm like, these 3 teams should never be playing each other at this point. You know what I mean? So I agree with you. I like it, but we have to get the seeding right for that to be viable and continue.
And I think seeding was a disaster in every region to begin with, because it was almost, because it was your ranked plus blah, you know, it was kind of a little bit arbitrary. It was crazy. So 100% you're correct there.
Well, I think before we wrap things up, GreyBeard, if you have anything you want to say, now the floor is yours, so feel free.
All right, so I need to do my little evangelizing, and so there's a couple of initiatives we have going, and one is relevant to North America and Europe. I've advocated, as I've said, I do think opening the regions is going to be good for us. But what I'd like to see, particularly from Europe, probably not realistic from North America given ping, but EU teams, I'd love to see good EU players come and pick up 2 SSA players and compete in the RLCS. Just take it, not necessarily to make the major or to try and win worlds or whatever, but just to help 2 local players develop that competitive experience, get their minds right in terms of how they should be thinking about the game. So that's one thing I'd like to advocate for. The other is people who are coaches, who are good coaches. Come and pick up some of our local players or a team or whatever. Bring your expertise, and North Americans can come and do this. And I think we've got 4 or 5 people who are kind of on board right now who are keen to do it. I'll find the players. We're going to unearth the players. But I just want to accelerate the transfer of knowledge. So and there are amazing, willing people all over the world. So if you are one of those or know someone who might be, get in touch with me. Come and help build this region.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much, GreyBeard, for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you outside of this and having you here. So, again, thank you, and hopefully we'll talk again soon.
Me too. And any opportunity I'm given to talk about it, I'm here. And thank you for being there, and all 4 of you to have a convo with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was great to meet you.
All right. Well,
Don't you